I actually wanted to start by asking if you can keep the lights on for 1 second. I just wanted to ask it, how many of you have actually read any of the Vedas or specifically the Rig Veda? 1, 2, 3. So how many of you know of the Vedas or know broadly of the existence of these texts? So that's a pretty good. Dr. Singh, and just for the record, apart from the whole healer entrepreneur thing, he's actually a doctor, he's the bad guy in the room kind of thing. So, Dr. Singh, how did you come to want to know about the Vedas? And the second part of that question is, and why did you choose Sri Aurobindo? I'm assuming most of you know about Sri Aurobindo and his work. No? Yes?
Probably.
Yes, some. How did you choose Sri Aurobindo's interpretation, and I'll use the word interpretation as opposed to translation of the Vedas?
So those are two. Let me start with Sri Aurobindo first, and then I'll go to the Veda. I was a student in medical school, first year, and a friend of mine...
In Delhi?
In Jaipur. And a friend of mine introduced me to Sri Aurobindo, and I fell in love with his philosophy, futurism, internationalism, humanism, seeing all humanity as working together, tapping the greatest ability of each person. That's where the human potential movement came from. And so great contribution, although modern India did not really understand him, and modern world did not understand him, and no one read him. So anyway, I fell in love with him, and his spiritual approach to life. He was also a revolutionary, one of the key, probably the first radical revolutionary of India, instrumental in creating the movement of independence in 1905, Bengal's partition, for those who love history, Lord Curzon, and 1907 he insisted on complete independence of India, Purna Swaraj as they called it. And it's very interesting, geniuses like this, visionaries. In 1907 he said India is going to be free. And he predicted there will be ups and downs, the high will become low, the low will come up high, and in the midst of all this tumult, India will become free. 1907. In any case, more important than that, what he was focused on is what will India do with her independence? And that's a question we are facing right now. What are we doing with our independence? What kind of a country do we want to be? Because India is important. At least he felt that India is a bearer of an ancient knowledge system, ancient light, which needs to come back to the world. So that's, of course, I've been writing about him, reading about him for the last 37 years, and the more I go deeper into him, the more I learn. Now, the Veda is one of his most important contributions to modern thought, modern Indology. About 100 years ago, he wrote about how the Veda works in 3 layers, has 3 layers of meaning. And by the way, this is not a new discovery. This is an ancient understanding of the Veda right from the Veda. The Veda kind of as a meta art describes itself and says that very few will understand the Veda. Nirnya Vachamsi means it's secret words, and only a seer can understand the seer. We don't have to be seers, we can make it simpler. And he made it simpler. And then if you go to the Upanishads, you go to the Gita, there is a beautiful elucidation of what the Veda is. The trick to understanding the Veda is to see it as beautiful poetry. It has beautiful symbolism, and being a poet or an aspiring poet, I love it. It is not philosophy. It is to see, presenting a symbol and seeing multi-layered meanings and dimensions in the symbols. And modern art has reached that. So I think humanity is reaching that understanding again of what symbols mean. For example, Mallarmé, when he writes in French poetry, he writes about the swan and beautiful Le Cygne, the swan. But the swan is not a physical swan. The swan is also the poet. This swan is trapped in a glacier, unable to fly. Now look at the symbolism. White swan, pure, what we associate with usually our soul, our highest, purest, being trapped in the glacier, moving, which is moving at a minuscule speed. And this swan could fly. And he's remembering himself what he could do. And this is what Mallarmé uses as a symbol of his own art, how he's unable to express what he feels. And then at a higher level, how he's unable to be as a human being. Now let's take this symbol and go back to the Veda and look at the symbols. The symbol of fire, the symbol of the sun, the symbol of water. Each element takes a new level, and I'll come to that. But why did I take it? Because I love poetry, and I completely, the modern translations of Veda do not do justice to it. I mean, people have done a lot. Modern Western interpreters have done a great job. It is not like 150 years ago, Max Muller and all. Their translations are flat. It's like you go to a movie. I go to a movie and describe the movie to you. And how do I describe it? I just give you the dialogues. No visual, no editing, no sound. That's how they translate the Veda, because they saw it only as a ritual. Modern translators, Jameson, Brereton, Wendy Doniger, Tatiana Elizarenkova, they see layers and layers of meaning, and it's such a refined art. And if you listen to it, listen to the practitioners when they chant it, you see the beauty of the sound. I'll just give you an example. First, starting Agni Sutra. Agni Mile Purohitam Yagyasya Devam Ritvijam Hotaram Ratnadhatamam. Now, this is performing art, performing poetry. Now we treasure it. On the day before yesterday, we had the poet laureate of Boulder. She was performing it. This is our performing arts. And when I say our, I mean it belongs to all humanity. It is not Indian. Yes, India held it as a tradition, but this was pre-India. This was when humanity itself was making a foray into what reality is, what truth is, trying to understand and coming up with some great discoveries. And so to me, that is why I was so involved, so interested, and I went deep into it. And sorry, long answer, but that's why I wrote about the Veda.
So one of the interesting things is that when Max Muller set out to translate the Vedas, the church had sort of suggested that these other disciplines like the Vedas needed to be unpacked but disproved against what was being taught in the Christian world. So there was a different intent in translating the Vedas back then, as opposed to the Wendy Donigers of the world who've unpacked it with, as Dr. Singh says, with the beauty and the incantation, but still pretty much from a Western perspective. You know, Dr. Singh, in the beginning of the book, and again, this is for our audiences, you talk about the Vedas being this really ancient text, which we know it is. You've, of course, dated it 6,000 to 16,000 years. But the question I have for you is that in its telling, because it was an oral text,
it is,
and it was assimilated much later, pretty much like the Bible.
Yes.
The Bible, when it was being written in every different church, it was being written by scribes who brought in perhaps nuances or differences or their interpretation. And you didn't have for a very long time one Bible that was being taught. The Vedas, in the same way, has really been an assimilation of collective knowledge and thought.
Yes.
And this is something that has been distilled now into what we believe is part or an interpretation of the original text.
So Max Muller said we have saved with us only 1% of the original poetry that was created by the Vedic rishis. Now think about it, 1%. This is 10,000 verses, 1,000 hymns. I mean, if I spend my whole life in it, absorbed, I will be able to do probably justice to 10-15%. What a tremendous document of our spiritual discoveries. This is the first scripture, the revelation And if you, going beyond the revelation, what kind of revelation? Something true was found by these people who were just exploring with innocence, with purity. They had no baggage, they didn't have anything to prove. And Max Mueller, of course, came with an agenda. But Veda being our heritage across humanity, I think it's critical that we take it, we learn about it, and we go deeper into the essence of it. Now, Wendy Doniger dates it to 1700 BCE. Brereton and Jameson, I think 1500 BCE. George Feuerstein, I think 3000 BCE. 2700. So these are different. I don't know. I'm not a historian. We probably will never know. Because in oral tradition, we were not there doing YouTubes and recording. There was no such thing.
But do remember the Vedas were passed on in a particular sect. So there was no democratic access to these texts.
Yes.
They were passed on by a particular class, the Brahmin caste, who held on to it, like scribes do. That was their power. And it was only much later did it become democratically accessible.
Even the pronunciation, they meticulous practice by rote, and we don't know any other language which we can pronounce. Chaucer's English, we do not know how to pronounce. 600 years ago, we do not know how Chaucer pronounced his English. A very perfect knight. I can make it 100 different ways, say it, and I would be right because you don't know how to judge it. You don't know how it was spoken. But this was spoken in a certain way. Every part, every nuance of the pronunciation was saved, and even every word they had to memorize it forward, backward, sideways, and that's the beauty.
Incantation was in the meter, which when you go to any of the schools, even today, whether it's in the Ramakrishna Mission or in the Hindu Banaras University in Varanasi, the incantation remains the same because the meter hasn't changed. But Dr. Singh, at the heart of the Veda is the idea of oneness.
Yes, yes. Oneness not as we understand it in the modern mind. And modern religions. And this is remember, these are our forefathers. These are our ancients. Yours, mine, Proto-Indo-European language, which is supposed to be the hypothetical mother language of all, at least the Indo-European languages. And Sanskrit is the closest to the Proto-Indo-European language. Vedic Sanskrit is even closer. And then there are, again, theories. Some people say Vedic Sanskrit is the PIE. Some people say no. And I'm not an expert, but if you start taking the words will run into other languages. So Agni is fire. Agnes, very common word, Agnes has come from fire, English word. Igneous, from which igneous comes, all your igneous rocks around. Igneous is coming from fire. Ignite comes from fire. Agape, Christian word, divine love, Christian love, comes from the same root. So what does this Agni mean? This Agni is not an external fire. This Agni is also the divine within you, the divine love within you. It is also the power of concentration. It is also ascesis. So the one reality that the Veda talks about is a very dynamic reality. This one reality presents itself in a multitude of forms, everything. We are seeing every form, every being, every name. It is presenting itself like an explosion of name and form. And through their meditations, through observing, through inquiry, they found out that at its root, there was one reality. They called it Ekam Sat. Yet, that one reality is not an abstract thing outside judging us. That one reality is the whole universe. It is transcending the universe, yet is the universe. And it is each individual. It is in each of us. So unity with multiplicity. Because it is so united, because it is so one, it can allow infinite diversity. And that's the beauty of the thought. In the today's world, it may be worthwhile remembering that.
You can do a lifetime of lectures on oneness.
Yes,
You can do a lifetime of lectures on shunyata
yes.
from oneness, and we'll still be here. But I'm having to unpack his book in 1 hour, so we're just
Yes.
going to race forward. Earlier today, some of you may have been part of the session on Buddhism, which was amazing and incredible and gave you a new sense. And again, this is something that you talk about, how Buddha realized samsara
Yes,
through dukkham,
yes,
by rejecting, by suffering, by putting his body through all of this. But in many ways, the Vedas teach us about purnata,
yes,
joy,
yes,
of being realized for your entirety.
yes.
Give us the difference.
The Veda is an affirmation of life. The Vedic rishis accepted everything because everything is that. Which means everything, if that one, they called it that one because they didn't have a word, that, tat. If that is allowing every diversity to exist, who are we to reject it? So the modern tendency of rejecting life, rejecting the body, that is not for the rishis. Since all is that, this body too is that. This mind too is that. This heart, this vital, this prana, chi is that. So the Veda is a vast affirmation. In fact, one of the biggest myths that people don't understand is Indra. Indra is not a god outside. Indra is our higher awareness, higher mind, the luminous mind. The luminous mind unlocks the rays of the sun from matter. Now think about it, which means to that understanding, this matter contains the highest knowledge. We just don't see it. It is involved. It is buried in it. And again, another discussion we can have.
Anubhav saw it in his paintings.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That is an experiential, that you can experience it. The artists will express it. But that is a vast embrace of the universe. And the Veda has 7 lokas or 7 worlds. Talk about the multiverse that we think of. But each of them is the same reality. It's just a different manifestation. So matter is a different world. It's a different manifestation. Your mind is a different level. Above that, there are other worlds. And yet, we are all those worlds. All those worlds are within us and available to us. Another great discovery of the Veda is man is a hologram. I'm using a modern word, is a hologram of the universe. Whatever is there in the universe as a possibility, we hold it within us as a possibility. So when they describe the human being as made of 3 layers, they are describing the world around us: matter, life, and mind. Body, life, the vitality, and mind. That's how they bhu bhuva swaha. The Buddha, he rejected the Vedic rituals. By that time, these had degenerated. We had gotten fixated. The original meaning of the word Brahman...
Well, the ruling class had taken it over and controlled the way information was disseminated. So you didn't have access. Yes. And you could only get access to the gods through the Brahmin class.
Yes.
So it's about power more than...
The original meaning of Brahman is one who knows the mantra. And the mantra is the power of speech, rhythm, frequency, and poetry. The power of that energy, the one who has unlocked that energy and who can express it, that is a Brahman. A Brahman is not by genetic, heredity. But we forgot that. Indians got rigid, ossified, the society, the culture became rigid. So the Buddha, brilliant as he was, he rejected all this, but he kept the metaphysics, he kept the psychological worlds of that. The devas still appear in his world. The meditation still appears. He looks at the world and he calls it dukkha. But even after his enlightenment, he continues living and liberating anyone whom he can for the next 40 years. So the shunya, where you cannot describe anything. Shunya is not zero, by the way. Shunya is
Nothingness or eternal nothingness.
no concept exists. All your concepts are gone. And if you go to the Nasadiya Sukta, 10th Mandala, I think 129th, Nasada Sino Sada Si Tadanim. There was neither existence nor non-existence. What a beautiful way. And even the Western interpreters love Nasadiya Sukta. You should go back to it. It's a beautiful work of art. Just a few shlokas and captures. Nasadiya Sukta is describing the beginning of the universe. There was neither existence nor non-existence. And he goes on, Nasada Sino Sada Si Tadanim, neither truth nor non-truth, nor sky, nor movement. Everything is rejected. Neti, neti it's called. Reject, reject. Until what are you left with? Nothing, no concept. The origin of this universe can only begin with something that we cannot think of. Our mind is not capable of. But the Rishi is taking you to that state where your mind has lost all its comfortable things that are known, comfortable concepts. All the concepts are gone. My thought process, my opinion is, that's where the Shunya really came into world literature and world thought. And the Buddha took it. Of course, he's a genius. We respect him. But it came in the Veda.
The Buddha sought a truth.
Yes.
The Vedas provide to us a way of seeking the truth.
Yes.
As perfection.
Yes.
But man is not perfect.
Yes.
How then do we seek this truth?
So, the Veda, the journey towards truth, that is called Ritasya Pantaha. So they saw the limitation of body, limitation of prana, of our vitality, of our mind. But they saw that there were higher levels available to us where there is perfection. They sought, believe it or not, the most important thing they sought was immortality. I'm sure they had seen people dying, relatives, loved ones dying. I need to be immortal. I mean, if I'm trying to put myself there. We need to be immortal. How do we become immortal? So they called it amritam, that which does not die. Amritam. Amritam is not a nectar, that which does not die. How do you reach that? By discovering that there is perfection in us already. There is divinity in us already. And there is a way to that divinity. And each of us houses it, lives it, and is that. We have to realize it, and we have to unlock that perfection that is hidden within us. Because, and again the suktas describe how the truth hides itself from itself. So we just need to realize that the perfection is here, and we need to unlock it. And that is the whole journey of the Veda. So through whatever, meditation, mantra, devotion,
Tantra.
Work, tantra, of course, it comes later. So these are and then it flowered into so many paths, but this is what they prescribed.
The mother, in a letter she wrote to Sri Aurobindo, talked about how she was in a class of young people and she was trying to teach them, and she felt really depressed because she realized that none of them were even listening to what she had to say. And she writes in her letter that in that awareness that they weren't receiving anything from her, she just felt completely sucked into an abyss of great darkness where her arms flopped down and her head flopped down and touched her knees. And she saw the jagged edges of this dark crevice. And in going into this dark crevice, she suddenly got jolted and saw the light.
Yes.
Do we all have to experience a darkness to be able to receive the light?
We do. Aren't we experiencing the darkness within us, around us? You said yesterday, look at where the world is. But even in that darkness, there is light. And that's what I take from it. In the densest, deepest darkness is the profoundest, strongest light. The Veda calls it the rays of the sun. The sun is not a physical sun. The sun is a symbol of oneness. The sun is a symbol of what is called truth consciousness and bliss, Satchidananda. That's how they described the divine. They did not have, a name for God. So the sun is that symbol, and those rays of knowledge, of revelation, are buried in everything that we are. Which, if you go to quantum physics, this matter is also energy. At one point, all this becomes energy. And of course, quantum physics is a different way of approaching it. Doesn't prove what the Veda is saying. The Vedic Rishi, by experience, realizes that oneness. And the mother's beautiful thing about the new yogis, is they documented a lot of their experiences. And so we can see parallels in their experiences with what the Veda said. And that's what Sri Aurobindo brought out, that the myths of the Veda, which we take as some stories of Indra fighting some dark demon called Vritra, are stories of our own consciousness. In ourselves, our higher consciousness is fighting the darkness. We are feeling, we don't notice it. Each of us has this battle of light and dark going on constantly at some level or the other. She described it from a different perspective. But it is the myth that is going on in our lives constantly. And yes, we are experiencing it. I hope none of us has to go that deep into the darkness as she did. But she was a great yogi. She was a great adept and seer. Hopefully, we can learn from it and we can avoid that deep darkness as individuals and as collective humanity.
A rocket to leave the planet needs 9x of fuel, which is rocket fuel,
Yes.
to be able to break through this gravitational pull,
Yes.
which is Earth. If we see ignorance as that gravitational pull, what is it that we need to break free of this ignorance and be able to achieve and move beyond and see the light and receive the sun and realize the Agni that you talk about?
So there are multiple ways. I think each of us can find a way that works for him or her. One very simple way is inquiry, just inquiring who we think we are. We have certain concepts, and our education system, being what it is, has given us certain concepts, definitions which we have tagged ourselves with. But if we start inquiring why we name certain things the way we do, why we name ourselves and why we fix ourselves in a certain way, we'll start breaking through that. It can be breaking through devotion, breaking through selfless action, breaking through knowledge. Whichever you have an aptitude for, you can do it. The Veda allows infinite opportunities, infinite paths for each of us. You can follow the spiritual traditions of India. You can follow the spiritual traditions of Christ, beautiful, the Buddha. Each of us has given us those paths that are already within us and make it simple. And I think that's what we can learn from the Veda. And interestingly, Sri Aurobindo said something beautiful. The Veda has influenced all the religions, all the philosophies, because it is our earliest compilation of spiritual records. So if you see Agni comes in almost every religion. The light, Agni is not just fire, by the way. Agni is also light of revelation. In Judaism, Agni is there. Zoroastrianism, of course, tremendously influenced by the Veda. In Islam, Nuran ala Nur, the light beyond light, keeps Pentecostal fire. That symbol of light constantly comes in every religion. Light is good, equated with good. Darkness is equated with bad, constantly. That is a Vedic symbol. Light is equated with knowledge, with awareness, with awakening. Now, how do we enhance it? First is, don't think you're helpless. First, just drop that concept that we have been, stop being so negative and skeptical. You have all the possibility within you. That's what the Veda says. And that's why I wrote the book. If you want to learn how to find out, read the book.
You know, you used the word darkness and bad. In actuality, there is no bad.
There is no bad. That is correct.
And within that, can you, again, I mean, I know it's a lifetime of experience, but can you give us a sense of what does non-dual mean?
Non-dual is a beautiful way of when we say one, when we say there is a God, what do we mean? I mean, our brains have been messed up. So we say God, what do we mean? And we have a picture of someone with a beard sitting on a cloud and judging us and giving us marks, and you get good points, bad points. But if we really look at it, that's a very childish way of looking at the divinity. God, if omniscient, if omnipotent, if omnipresent, has to be everywhere and everything. So that oneness is a part, is the beginning, the concept that comes through the Veda and continues in every religion. But when we say that one, even that has a duality, because who is saying it? I'm saying that God. When we say there is non-duality, suddenly we move to a different order of thinking. Now even I am included, that there's no me sitting there and this is all the other. This I is also a part of that which we cannot define because it's anirvachaniya. We cannot talk about it. So the word that was used was advaitam, without the other, without duality. So this is a beautiful approach, non-duality. And if we think about God, God, even in Islam, I was reading it today, Wahdate Wajud, they say, the total oneness. And of course, see, organized religion has its own approach to things. And if we put it aside, if we go to the esoteric religion, the spiritual aspects of the religion, they will touch that unity which goes beyond words. Non-duality, I think, is one of the most beautiful way, Advait, without two, of describing that. That, if you can describe that. So
you need many lessons for that particular one. But, you know, you talked about organized religion, and we're seeing this not just here in America, but in India and, you know, across the Arabic world. We're seeing organized religion today really dominating, or it's come back. And one of the things that you've written about and Sri Aurobindo talks about is that we do not need to turn into zealots.
no.
You know, or we don't need to take sides in this case. And finally, at the end of the day, all of this is one. This is the lesson that the Vedas teach us. And yet, back home in India, we are seeing that this is not the lesson that they take. The lesson that they are now taking is to build the temples and search not within them, but build the temples outside of them and create very much a sense of the duality. How do you see, or how do you feel that we can go back to the teaching of these, or not teaching, to the understanding and therefore realization of these texts?
I think it is one of the most, probably the only question, serious question affecting you, us, all of us. Do we choose a path of the external forms of religion, or we go to the truth of each religion and find that oneness? The Veda, being the earliest, gives us a lot of important insights about who we have become, where we are, and each of us has to kind of soften up a little bit, find that inner reality which corresponds to the truth of the universe. It is a danger when we create these outer structures, and there are actions and reactions, and whenever there are actions and reactions, the left and the right, and then one religion against another, violence comes in, and violence is never the way of true spirituality, unless it's you're fighting unrighteousness. And even there you have to reach a very high level of spirituality, as in the Gita. Before you can fight, you have to reach that equanimity. Who has the equanimity? Everyone is reacting to each other. I think it is something that each of us has to work at a granular level, at an individual, personal level. Little habits of thought, of feeling come through us, and we have to be able to step out of them and somehow be able to create a new space where neither this nor that. We have something that's alive, something that's vibrant, something that's tender and vulnerable, yet it's the most precious thing about us. If we can find that within each of us and then create that space with each other, that is what Sri Aurobindo is talking about. The future of humanity, a spiritual being. The next being will be above that of mind. He called it the supermind, who has the consciousness of the truth. Our mind is dissipated, divided. The way we see the world, we see it through our senses, so it's automatically divided. I and you, us and them, the ego sense comes in. To drop this ego sense is a long journey, but it can be done with clear understanding that if I'm only feeding my ego, I'm only increasing the violence in the world. If I am able to drop this ego, whether through devotion, whether through understanding, whether through selfless action, then I'm creating the space, perhaps for a new kind of a world, which is what Sri Aurobindo envisioned.
How many of you here are mathematicians or physicians, I mean particle physics or quantum physics? Anybody in the room? So, Dr. Singh, the understanding of the Vedas, and we're seeing this today through the proof coming out of the James Webb photographs that are being captured by the James Webb telescope. And in many ways, it's going back. Every particle physicist and quantum scientist is sort of looking back and going back to read the Vedas, to be able to understand what is being now given to us as scientific evidence by the James Webb. And I'm sure many of you have seen the more recent photographs. Last week they released the photographs of the first creation, of the first burst of the stars from our immediate distance, which was whatever, 3.9 billion years ago. The light has traveled to the periscope. What is this way of Vedic thinking that allowed the seers, and I'm using the word now very specifically, seers, to be able to envision what we are now understanding scientifically?
It's called recursive thinking, and it's in computers, it's used in mathematics. Recursive thinking, you look at any pattern or data and you start breaking it down until you reach a baseline, and you find a baseline which repeats itself. And in different words, in other, Mandelbrot, I think, called it the fractal. This smallest bit that duplicates itself and becomes multiple universes, but the pattern is there. Or the hologram. Each one of us is a hologram of the universe. Just one way of saying it. If we don't take it too literally, it gives you an ability to break down this vast universe, and we go back and we go back to data points until we reach a point which is called the point of recursion. That is the baseline, base point. And that key has kept duplicating and creating that universe. And that point is each of us. That divinity is in each of us. That is the Agni that we worship. That is the purity in our heart that we worship. That is the Agni which in our higher mind becomes Vidyut or lightning. Lightning is not external lightning. It's the lightning of knowledge, the revelation. Higher above that is the sun, the light of the sun. That Agni becomes solar fire. This fire is lightning fire, solar fire. That fire is also in matter. So if you keep looking back at this, it again includes you in that oneness. You're not separate because we are non-dual. And that recursive thought process brings you mathematically to a baseline, which is the genius of the Veda.
Again, I don't know whether you all have read when in the collider, in the latest experiment, when they got to the closest of the God particle, the scientist there said that's when he realized the connection between us, or the atom, which was the God particle, with the rest of the universe which exists. Sadly, we've run out of time, but I'm going to ask, before I open it up, I'm going to ask Dr. Singh to tell us a little bit about the idea of the golden womb or the Hiranya.
A beautiful
Garbha.
image. Ah, what a beautiful image. Hiranya Garbha, it's called. And I just love that. This universe came out of the golden womb, Hiranya Garbha. And there are different terms used in Sanskrit. The para, that which is beyond, became the golden womb. Everything was in that golden womb. And from that golden womb, all this came. Now think about it for a moment. In the womb, there's no time, there's no space. When you are there, you are not there. There's no separate person in the womb. And we just go back to our personal experience. That is the womb of the universe. If we can appreciate that, from that, this whole universe came. But we can experience that golden womb within us, even today. One of the ways is when you go in deep sleep, you are in that golden womb. You don't know it. You are in that golden womb. Anything that brings you to a deep love, deep feeling, you are touching that golden womb. That golden womb has not gone. You can call it singularity, you can call it whatever term. But to me, it's a beautiful image. Don't make it a mathematical or philosophical image. It's a way to describe the world beautifully.
Unpacking the Vedas in 45 minutes. Questions?
All right, we have 2 microphones. Please raise your hand. There's someone over there.
A little bit of light in the hall.
No. Okay. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. My question to you is, well, maybe before that I can give a little preface to what I'm trying to ask you. I think the conversation that is carried or the ideas carried in the Vedas, they're so important. They kind of help you understand the very essence of life. And I think this knowledge, I wish I had this knowledge when I was growing up as a little child. How can we make that happen, given the current political environment in India or anywhere in the world? How can we make this happen without falling in the trap of religiosity? Because the Vedas are so seen as intrinsic to Hinduism. How can we separate the two? Because I think there is this eternal message, eternal knowledge, eternal truth.
How can you separate the two? Well, the Vedas is not religion, but we'll hold that question. Any other questions? And then there's one there.
Thank you for this very interesting talk. Dr. Singh, I really appreciate your approach and your perspective on Vedas as an expression of art and poetry. Extending that, I would like to play as a devil's advocate for a moment and ask you, when this interpretation is taken a step further, and when a sort of objective truth is extracted from that form of expression, how feasible it is, and what are your thoughts on this to apply mechanisms of really finding out truth or really finding out what is really correct or not correct?
Sure.
Whether
so
there is
perfect truth as opposed to objective truth, and as she asked, how do you separate, and the way that the Vedas have now been appropriated by religion, how do you?
So
just to add to that, what are your thoughts on applying mechanisms of self-correction and having very clear, not
non-dual thinking? I think is the question.
Okay. It's a whole process, so I cannot give it in a few minutes, but a whole process of self-evolution. To answer your question, first thing is, do not try to change anybody else. Impossible. You can never change anyone else. The only one you can change is yourself. That understanding has to go deep inside. The first thing activists do is go around and starting changing others, but they come up with all kinds of reactions, of violence. You cannot change the world with violence. You're taking sides. If I go and try to change it, either as a rightist or a leftist, whatever I'll do, I'll only exacerbate. So first thing is to understand this deeply. And Krishnamurti used to say this beautifully. You are the universe you are seeing. If you don't see that, you're making a fundamental error in approach and thought. So that is the beginning. Now, the Veda, I'm not going to use Veda as a prescription for each of us, because it is not just a way of discovery, it is also a reminder that the true Veda is within us. That is the understanding. The true Veda is always within our hearts. It is not an outside book. If you can find that true Veda, you don't need any external Veda. The external Veda is a reminder of who you are. Discovering who you are is a lifelong process. It takes us many years, maybe decades, but lifetimes. So we must start now. Now is the only time we have. If we can begin, whatever comes to us, we can begin with that. And then there is a whole process of how you do it. Let's come to you as formalizing a process. Veda does not give a formal process, but it will give you indications. It will give you the symbols that will tell you. It will describe a higher world, the Indras, the world of the Deva. And by the way, a Deva is not a god. Deva comes from the word div, which means that which is full of light. From which comes the word diva, by the way. When you call someone a diva, that's the origin. Divine. These are words that old Vedic Sanskrit and even before that Proto-Indo-European language gave us. We are all still connected. When we talk to each other, if this ignited your mind, you already had Agni in your head. Ignited your mind, if I fired up your brains, that Agni already entered your neurons. That is a poetic image. We're not going to try to dissect a butterfly. So there are no mechanical processes, although there is a science to it, a science of self-development, which can be used, and that's a whole process, which Veda and Vedanta and different philosophies give us. By the way, pre-Socratic Greeks, if you study them, they are very close to the Veda. Parmenides, Heraclitus, Thales, Plotinus. Plotinus, of course, came in 250 AD. They're very close. German philosophers, your Hegel and our friend Schopenhauer, who danced on the streets when he first read about the Upanishads. And Upanishads are also part of the Veda, by the way. They're not separate. So I hope I answered somewhat.
So Dr. Singh, before everybody sort of rushes off to discover themselves, can you also just explain how at different points of consciousness of our existence, we receive and understand information differently, and we don't have to go jump into the brook.
You don't have to go anywhere to discover yourself. That's the beautiful part of it. Because who is going to discover whom? You are already that. That is the great Vedantic message, by the way. You are that. Tat tvama asi. So don't go on a trip. You can go into the mountains. I mean, whatever comes to your heart. Learning to find that messaging that is coming from within, which already the divinity is within you. Learning to find that, discover that, being that, is the simplest, easiest, most beautiful way. Whatever comes natural to you. If it's the Buddhist way, beautiful. If it's Christ, beautiful. If you want to sit in the Himalayas and in a cave, beautiful. If you want to go and play, if you want to sing, all these are approaches to that within you, which you already are. So it is a play, realizing that and making it fun, not making it a torture, which is what we do to ourselves. Make it something lighthearted. The Vedas had a lot of fun. These rishis are full of laughter. They make fun of each other. They laugh. You look in the verses and they're having fun. They're making fun of you.
But they also prescribe tantric sex, just for the one route to get up there.
I missed that. I'm going to go back to that. I need to read that. But the last, let me just read the last verse. Mandala 10th, 191 Sukta, last one. What a beautiful. This is the message they go with. This is the message for they know the cycle is coming, the cycle of time, and we are going to be in a mess, the dark. Be one in aspiration. Be one in heart. Be one in mind. And be together in this self-offering. And yajna does not mean burning a fire. Yajna is your self-offering to the divine. You give everything. Who you are, you're giving it. I give myself to you, to the divine. That is their message to us. And if we can follow just that one message, one in aspiration, one in mind, one in heart, and together as a collective, as a shared, not as an organized religion, but maybe coming together as an ecosystem, coming together to help each other, coming together to see each other as one family. I think that is the message that's why I wrote the Veda, by the way.
As the whole. One last question.
We have one here.
And I have
Go
one
ahead.
here. Go ahead.
So unfortunately, not being dualistic is really hard right now, but we have 2 questions.
Actually, my question goes with what you just said, Dr. Singh. I've been participating in a lot of somatic training, and with a large group, and it fascinates me how I and others seem to define our mind and our body as separate things. And I was just pondering that myself. Why is that? People talk about their body like it's some creature outside of them that they have no knowledge of or no control over. What is the psychological process going on in that case?
Because our minds
Just hold on to that one. And there was another question?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
So, my question actually to you is, I have twofold. One is, since you've been discovering yourself for the past 37 years, how do you practice medicine differently, than perhaps what you've been observing? So that's part A. And if there's time for part B, I'll ask you part B later, but that itself would be very...
So practicing medicine,
Those
duality,
are connected,
mind
by the way. Beautiful questions. Why are we messed up? Because of the duality, the dichotomy. The mind sees itself as separate from the body. We have lost respect for the body. We have lost respect for the earth. The body and earth are parallels in the Veda. They are the same. Bhu, the ground, the earth, and the body. The moment we start respecting the body, we start taking care of it. We start taking of the earth, which belongs to all of us and our future. Suddenly we have a different approach because these are not separate. These are both parts of us. And there are other parts of us that we have not discovered. We should discover them. We should find the unity among all this. And that is our journey. How do you practice medicine? Our medicine, Western medicine, if I may, is part of the same paradigm. There's a clock outside which you're going to fix. You know what that clock is? It's your body. And you're going to fix it. You have levers inside, you have wheels turning, and you're going to fix it. Well, that model is outdated. Each of us, I hope, knows that. Modern medicine is deficient in many ways, and how do you find a new way of healing? I'm going to defer it to the session after me, because the woman who's going to come after me has spent a lifetime in wellness, in holistic medicine, an integral approach to healing. And that is what our world needs. We are diseased emotionally, psychologically. We are schizophrenic. And that is why the problems today of our healing arts are not arts. And so we need to rediscover that kind of a healing that we have lost in following that dichotomized, dualistic, reductionistic, Cartesian way of healing each other. It doesn't work. And so I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perhaps we can end with the idea of the whole Purnamada.
That's another
If you can please recite that and end with that.
That's a beautiful... So I'll make it simple.
No, recite it first.
Recite it? So, because otherwise everyone... Purnamidam, Purnam Adaha, Purnat, Purnam Udachyate. So that is the whole. This is the whole. How beautiful it is. From the whole comes the whole. And even when you take the whole out, what remains? The whole. So, and this is W-H-O-L-E, this is not H-O-L-E. So, we start all our chanting Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. That is, and I know I'm getting a little technical, and I try not to bring too much Sanskrit into it, but it's a beautiful concept. If we can understand the concept without tagging it to a certain religion, tagging it to a certain geographic location, although, and that is the dance I have to do all the time, that is where it was preserved for us. So honoring that, the Indians did a great job, let's accept it. We did a great job. But now it really is pre-Indic. It is not just part of one geography or one thought or one culture. If we go back to it, these are our ancestors, this is our legacy, this is our heritage, and hopefully we can learn from this collectively and share with each other collectively.
Ladies and gentlemen, what still remains is the whole Dr. Pariksith Singh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr.